The Audi Q7. Been waiting to drive this for quite some time. And for 25, they made some updates. And you might be wondering what those are. It's really so hard to tell that even previous generation owners won't know what they are. But essentially, they made some revisions to the exterior and to the infotainment by adding some apps and a voice assistant or two. So if that's what you're looking for, well, you're gonna love it. Let's talk about what the Q7 is. This is their largest luxury vehicle in the VW Audi Group's portfolio. And it has been around for quite some time. And really, it didn't need too much updates. This is a vehicle you buy because of its understated luxury. It's not trying to shout at you, and with the updated tamarind brown metallic paint color, it's got this copperish look in direct sunlight. Any other time, it goes black. And when you do the black optic package, this thing is a total sleeper. And really, that's what I like about it. I think most owners of this car, that's exactly why they buy it. It doesn't have the strangeness of the updated X7, some of the in-your-face styling of the Genesis or the Mercedes equivalents. And, you know, I think it falls more in line with what the XC90s tried to do, that timeless SUV shape. On the interior space, this is all about isolation. When you get the Prestige package, which adds about 12 grand, and we're talking about a $78,000 vehicle then, it is really quiet. It is super solid. There's no point in this where you're feeling a ton of squeaks and rattles. It just feels like a tank over most pavement surfaces. And I would be remiss to say that that's why you buy this. You're buying it because of that isolation factor. The technology certainly is dated. The center gauge cluster is basically what you're seeing in every car. The infotainment is haptic. It reminds me of the old BlackBerry Storm usability of infotainment. It's just average in every single way. It has not aged well. And because they chose to do a screen here for HVAC controls, you have no storage. So if you're buying a 3-row SUV and you have a couple kids in here and you need storage space, you have 2 cup holders and a very tiny armrest. That's about it. Other than that, you're using your door storage in this little thing by your knee here, which is barely gonna fit a wallet. It's the problem with designing a luxury vehicle like this in the modern age where everything's grown. Things like the Grand Highlanders, the new Mazda products, and basically all the Kia, Hyundai, and Genesis vehicles do usability and luxury much better than that's in here. So they need to look at that overall. But seating design is great. Front seats are super, super comfortable. The massage function works great. The second row is super usable. It's not frustrating to use like the X7. It's quick. Some of it's manual as well. The third row operation is quick and seamless, but the third row here is more of a gimmick than most of the other luxury vehicles in its segment. No normal person is fitting back there. Even a small child, there's no way you're fitting a car seat unless that second row is jammed up all the way. So you have to look at this really in terms of cargo and the usability part in that third row capacity. If you don't have a need to have a lot of people in here and you don't jam this thing full of stuff, it might be the vehicle for you because it's on the smaller end of the 3-row spectrum, and it definitely drives smaller, namely when you get to the rear steer settings. So I'm gonna send this into the shop. Jack's gonna talk about some of the technical tidbits, and we're gonna get into a detailed talk in the drive.
The 2025 Audi Q7. This has just been refreshed for the second time. As Mark has already mentioned, the 2025 update is really just exterior styling and some slight interior software changes along with some trim piece differences. This car is an old vehicle at this point. It came out in 2016, which makes this nearly a 10-year-old vehicle. The first real update was done in 2020. It is on the MLB Evo architecture, the platform that is shared with Bentley, Lamborghini, and of course, Porsche. I'm gonna be honest, Audi isn't the best about sharing technical information with us, so most of what I know about the Q7 comes from what Porsche changed on the Cayenne and Bentley changed on the Bentayga. They are different setups, to say the least. So this variant of MLB Evo, just like on those other SUVs, is their rear-biased all-wheel drive setup. It is a multi-link front, multi-link rear. The difference is wheelbase. Compared to something like a Cayenne, the Q7 is 4 inches longer or thereabouts, meaning it can accept that third row and it has more cargo capacity. When it comes to drivetrain options, we're going to be talking about the two we currently get. The 2-liter 4-cylinder, which this is not, or the 3-liter single-turbo V6. The main difference between both of those is towing capacity and power output. When it comes to towing, The 4-popper tows a little less than, and the V6 variants tow over 7,500, maybe 7,700 pounds, which is a big disparity. When it comes to horsepower, the V6 makes 335, 369 foot-pounds of torque, where the 4-popper makes less than 300 foot-pounds of torque and similar horsepower. There's a big disparity there. The 6-cylinder loses a couple MPGs, but it does do 0 to 60 in the mid-5s. They both put their power down through a ZF 8-speed automatic. When it comes to suspension setups, the lower trim cars get passive dampers. The highest trim vehicle, like this one is, gets vibroacoustic air springs. They dramatically improve ride quality. They allow you to raise and lower the vehicle. They have some anti-squat and anti-dive characteristics as well, improving the overall driving dynamics of the Q7. Again, as you're going to hear in the drive segment of this, this is not a sporty vehicle. This is about being the ultimate big luxury yacht that doesn't make you car sick. When it comes to other suspension options, at least in the regular Q7s, I'm going to be honest, we'll probably never see an SQ7. This thing can get optional rear steer. It's like $1,000. I highly suggest you do it. It dramatically decreases the turning radius. It improves nimbleness in low-speed corners, and it increases high-speed stability. All worthwhile driving characteristic improvements for around $1,000. So that, we're going to go take this for a quick drive around our favorite streets. Mark, we've been doing this job for a long time now. Not as long as the Audi Q7's been around though. And this is the second update. This is our first time in a Q7 as a press car. I'm gonna launch it, I'm in dynamic mode. I feel that boost building. On the open seas. I mean, all right, we've driven the Cayenne, we've driven the Bentayga, we've driven the SQ8, the RSQ8, basically every MLB Evo-based Audi, Porsche, VW Group vehicle on this platform.
We've also driven all the 3 rows, the X7, the XC90, the MDX.
Yes.
Whatever the hell.
GLS.
The GLS, yeah, sorry.
It's weird. You've always, in the background, you always told me you wanted an SQ7, right?
Yeah,
those were the vehicles you wanted?
For sure. Like, it was between like the X7 and the SQ7, just as a 3-row hauler that had a V8, because there's really, there's not too many options of handling well, driving well, and giving you kind of the cargo capacity and some of the towing capacity that you get from a larger SUV. And I wanted a luxury car. I wanted a luxury refined vehicle, and unfortunately, we talked about this off camera, and I just don't understand why there's not a luxury minivan. I feel like there would be a market for it because it doesn't exist, and you get more space out of it, but okay, we gotta live with this. So, the big thing with this thing is it's probably one of the best riding 3 rows.
Yes.
For sure.
Outside of the Porsche and the Bentley, which are a lot more money.
Yeah.
And honestly, after spending time in this, and you and I just spent a lot of time in a V6 Cayenne, which is the closest, equivalent to this. It has the same engine, same drivetrain, it's on the same architecture. Obviously, all the suspension components are different, but this is a lot less money than that vehicle, a lot less money. This thing's fully loaded, and it costs less than our medium-equipped V6 Cayenne.
Yeah, which is nuts.
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, it doesn't handle as well, and it may have more head toss. And before we elaborate on that, you and I talk a lot about how cars ride. To you, what makes good ride quality? Like, when I'm describing a car that's soft and compliant, what are you looking for?
Well, so this is there's not a one-size-fits-all thing to any vehicle. But when you're talking about a certain segment of a 3rd-row SUV, there's certain criteria that it needs to be able to do. One, it needs to feel nimble because they're longer. So parking, you need to be able to park it easily. Getting in reverse, going forward, the camera system needs to work because you can't see anything around you. You need the confidence that it's going to turn, that it's going to stop, that you don't need to get into the brake pedal, and it just feels like there's a ton of weight behind you. And dynamically, you got to think about this. If you're driving a 3-row SUV around, you probably have kids. And if you have kids, I can tell you one thing, you do not want a loud, bouncy, harsh, impacty ride over this type of broken pavement. And so it's about how well it absorbs this, how much initial compliance there is.
Which there's a lot in this car.
And that's the biggest thing. How much of that initial impact can these SUVs absorb in comfort mode or in their normal mode? Because you're not driving these things like an idiot, but you also want the ability of, like, when you get on the highway, you don't want the head toss like you're talking about. You don't want to be floating around. You need to be able to get into a mode, or the car needs to be adaptive enough to kind of control the up and down float. And that's what I'm looking for. I know it's a lot I just said.
No, it's important that people know what we're doing,
Again, I'm looking at this differently. I don't want a sports car out of a 3-row SUV, but I still want decent dynamics, some balance, but also more skewed towards really quiet, really compliant, and not a harsh ride. And it has to have a really good normal and comfort mode to be able to isolate you out of everything.
I think the Q7, compared to a Cayenne, is every bit as soft. And because this vehicle has rear steer, it does get in and out of corners quite well. It doesn't quite have the same level of flat ride that a Cayenne does.
Yeah.
You are definitely getting more head toss in this car, but it is bigger than a Cayenne.
Right.
You can fit more things in it.
Yeah.
And I do think, compared to your X7, there is more initial compliance over bumps in this vehicle. It does not have the dynamic capability of that vehicle. If you're on a back road, if you don't have your kids in your car, this is worse to drive. This gearbox and this V6, while they are efficient, it has no weird shifting whatsoever, is essentially lifeless. It's just a propulsion device. It's even more lifeless than it is in the V6 Cayenne.
Right.
You're also dealing with more weight. I can't imagine how slow this would feel with the 4-popper, but it is a good luxury SUV.
I think that's the thing, right? You're looking at basically 3 different engine options for this thing in the US. The 4-cylinder, I personally don't know why you would get it.
No.
But you're buying a luxury SUV.
Just get a used Q7 with a V6 at that point.
Yeah, because the V6 in here, to your point, is just literally here just to be here. But the good thing about it is it's ultra refined. It disappears into the background. When you do have to get on it, it's really smooth. It's got a warm resonance to it. Doesn't need to be fast.
And it tows over 7,000 pounds.
So it's perfect for what its intended purpose is. Should it make more power? Should it have more thrust? Kind of more B58-ish?
Yeah.
Yes. It can't compete there. But I think for this type of vehicle, it's just more than adequate. Clearly, you can get an SQ7, which gets you that V8.
Which we'll never drive on this channel, don't worry.
Right,
or we'll drive it in another 10 years.
Yeah, we'll drive it in 10 years. I like the fact that they give you that option, but then you're getting into really severe pricing. You're up, when you spec one of those out, you're over at like $110,000 properly. That's a big ask for something like this that, to be completely honest, this feels quite dated. I know the technology is what's dating it the most, and we talk about this endlessly. I think all the mechanical things they've done, the interior layout, most of the things that it does great is kind of lowered by the fact that they're just constantly reusing the same tech. They again, it's like every luxury product is trying to expand itself by adding more screens and all this crap. And that's not what's good about this. It's actually how well it drives and how compliant it is.
The things that make this platform special across all of its use cases, the Cayenne, the Bentayga, I've never driven an Urus, but I imagine the same for that.
Yeah.
Are some of that specialness is in this Q7. The electromechanical systems that are different but largely shared between all the various applications are still here. It's quiet, it's comfortable, it's a good SUV. And if you get one of these things either used, because honestly the 25 adds nothing other than some software and different fascias, I'm sure you're going to end up with a very good luxury boat. And if you got one of these on a good lease, I think you'll like it. I
think so. I mean, I feel like the X, like I brought this up before, XC90, this, and like a regular X7, it's a really hard choice to choose between them. The X7 has got a mild update. I would say it's a little bit more updated than this with the tech, but the XC90 just got a refresh, which is essentially nothing other than a facelift. So these 3-row SUVs are really old. So you have a great used market on them.
Which would you pick?
I would honestly look at the used market. because they're all so much, they've been out forever.
You
They're
get
all
an
about the same.
X7 for $40,000.
No doubt. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what's funny. You can get an X7 with like a V8 for $50,000. So regular, like mid-spec, you're in the 40s. This is going to be the same thing. The XC90, my old XC90 in 2019, that thing's worth like $28,000. You know, so,
Jesus.
yeah, no, I'm serious. So it's like, you know, these are great. You know, we're talking about this as a new vehicle, and
Yeah.
you know, if you're looking at it as a new vehicle, you're leasing it because you're just going to eat shit on the depreciation on it. But the used market is incredible for these things, and I mean, they offer a lot. I mean, this is a hell of a driving car.
Yeah, all the inputs are good. It rides well. I will say, if you are going to buy one of these, I do think the air ride makes a huge difference.
It does.
Sadly, you can only get it in the expensive trim.
Yeah, I mean, you have to go into the prestige package, and you know, like every luxury car, they're kind of bumping you up into the upper trim to get niceties, and you know, you're gonna pay even more if you want like the specialty colors, more leather surfaces. I mean, clearly, if you're buying this as a luxury product, you're not gonna care so much about it, but just be smart, because some of this shit, you're just throwing your money away.
All right, so with that, Mark, let's head into the final thoughts, sir.
Sounds good.
Final thoughts on the Audi Q7. For 2025, the updates are fairly minor, but even despite that and the fact that this is really an older vehicle at this point, it's still a very compelling option and something that I feel like is too often overlooked. What the Q7 does well is it is a honest 3-row or 2-row full-size luxury barge. It doesn't really pretend to be sporty. It embraces what it does well. And in many ways, it makes a hell of a lot more sense than the more expensive vehicles from its group. Things like the Cayenne are less usable and far more money, and the Bentega's on another planet. This gives you essentially all of the features of those cars at a much lower price point. You still have the excellent platform. While it doesn't necessarily handle as well as a Cayenne or ride as well, you're most of the way there for much less money. If you compare it to a GLS or GLE, I think the interior is a better place to be. And compared to the X5 or X7, in many ways, I think a lot of the interior features are better thought out, though it definitely feels smaller than something like an X7. And the drivetrain is not as proficient as my loved B58. That said, it's still a very good vehicle. So if you're looking at a full-sized SUV, it's worth a look at. So with that, thanks for watching. Hope to see you again soon.